Story 1. You don't forget the sound of water when it's not supposed to be moving. That night, the lake was still. So still it felt dead. No breeze, no ripples, just black glass under the moonlight. And then, from that silence, came the splash. It wasn't a fish. It wasn't a boat's wake. It sounded human. We were sitting around the fire outside the old Lakehouse. Me, Sarah, Liam, and Jenny. The four of us had borrowed the place from Liam's uncle for the weekend, hoping for quiet. But when we heard that splash, every head turned toward the dock. "Did you hear that?" Jenny whispered. We listened. Nothing. Then, another splash. Louder, closer. Liam chuckled, trying to play it off. Probably just a deer. I wanted to believe him, but something about it felt wrong. I grew up near lakes. That wasn't the sound of an animal swimming. It was frantic, desperate. We grabbed a flashlight and walked down the creaking dock. Our shoes thudded softly against wet wood, the boards groaning under us. The lake stretched out in front of us like a black abyss, swallowing the pale beam of light. Then, it happened. A pale hand broke the surface of the water. It didn't reach up, it reached out, toward us. I froze. Sarah gasped. The hand was bloated, mottled with a bluish-gray tint, the skin peeling as though it had been underwater for far too long. Long strands of black hair floated just beneath the surface, like seaweed. Another hand appeared next to it, then another, and another. We stumbled back, the flashlight beam shaking. There had to be half a dozen of them now, writhing just below the dock, fingertips curling in the air like they were searching. Jenny's voice trembled. "Oh my God, it's them." She was shaking now, eyes wide. "Them?" I asked. "There's a story." She swallowed, her voice cracking. "They say years ago, a boat capsized in the middle of the lake. No one survived. They say their bodies were never found. Locals say if you're here late at night, they come looking for you. They pull you in so you can join them." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to call her crazy, but I couldn't, because even as she spoke, the air grew cold. Not just night cold, but deathly, bone-deep cold. The kind that feels like it's seeping into you. The splashing grew louder. The hands began slapping against the wood beneath our feet, making dull, wet thunks. Something, no someone, began screaming in the distance. A high, strangled cry that seemed to come from deep inside the forest behind us. When the echo faded, I realized something horrifying. It wasn't coming from the forest. It was bouncing off the water. The screams were coming from below us. "Back up," I whispered. "Slowly. Don't run." Sarah wasn't listening. She dropped the flashlight. Its beam spun wildly across the water and bolted for the shore. The rest of us followed, but the dock seemed so much longer than before, as if it was stretching to keep us there. I don't remember tripping, but suddenly I was on my knees, my palms scraped against the wood. Before I could stand, something icy and slimy wrapped around my ankle. I looked down. A hand, fingers water-swollen and nails blackened, was gripping me so tightly I thought the skin would tear. I kicked and screamed, but another hand clawed up beside it, grasping at my leg. Half a face broke the water's surface, skin white as bone, one eye missing, the other staring straight into mine. I swear on my life, it smiled, then it pulled. My body hit the dock with a sickening thud, and my lower half slid over the edge. Freezing water rushed over me and stole the breath from my chest. I thrashed, but more hands burst from the darkness, wrapping around my wrists, my waist, my neck. They weren't just grabbing, they were hugging, holding me close, like they were welcoming me home. Somewhere above me, I heard Jenny screaming my name. Strong arms yanked at my shoulders, Liam's voice shouting curses, Sarah crying, but the cold grip below wouldn't let go. The screaming in the woods grew louder, and I realized with a sick twist in my stomach, it wasn't screams of pain. It was laughter. Low, wet, bubbling laughter echoing under the pier. I was sure I was going under. I could feel the water lapping at my ears, the dark closing over my head. But then, it stopped. The hands released me all at once. I scrambled onto the dock, coughing and shaking, choking on water and terror. When I looked back, there was nothing, just the black lake, still as glass again. We ran to the house, bolting the doors. No one spoke all night. Whenever I closed my eyes, I felt phantom fingers still clutching me, and in the moments before sleep, if I listened hard enough, I could still hear the faint splashing outside. The next morning, Liam wanted to leave, but we couldn't. The car wouldn't start. The road was washed out. And just now, as I'm writing this, I swear I hear it again. That same splash, closer this time, right outside. Story 2. You ever get that feeling that a house is watching you? Not just old floorboard creaks and wind in the walls kind of watching. I mean, eyes in places you can't see, following your breath. That's how Liam's Lakehouse felt the moment I stepped inside. It wasn't even night yet, just a gray, cloudy afternoon. But the air inside was cold in a way the outside wasn't. When you walked from room to room, it felt like someone had just been there a second before. We were only staying for the weekend. Me, Liam, his girlfriend Sarah, and my cousin Matt. Liam's uncle had passed the place down to him, but he'd never actually stayed there. He said it creeped him out. By the second day, I understood why. It started when I found the trap door. We'd split up, each poking around different rooms to see what the place was hiding. I ended up in the far corner of the living room where a faded rug lay bunched up. I went to straighten it, and my foot hit something wooden. Pulling the rug back revealed a square outline in the floor. A small brass handle glinted in the dust. A trap door. It wasn't locked. It groaned like it hadn't been opened in decades. A damp smell rushed out, the kind that sticks in your throat. I called out, "Hey, found something!" But no one answered. I figured they were too far off to hear me, so I went down. A narrow wooden ladder led into blackness. My flashlight's beam shook as I descended. The air was damp, heavy, like breathing through wet cloth. The basement floor was uneven stone, slick with moisture. The walls glistened faintly where my light touched them. And that's when I saw them, the claw marks, dozens, no, hundreds, all along the walls. Deep, jagged gouges in the stone, like someone had tried to dig their way out. I leaned closer. The tips of each scratch mark were stained dark. Not fresh, but something told me they hadn't faded entirely. That's when I heard it. A whisper. It was so faint I thought I imagined it. Just a soft hush like wind moving through grass. But there's no wind underground. I spun around, light slicing through the basement. No one there. The whisper came again, louder, closer. I couldn't make out the words. It was like the voice was speaking from underwater. Hello? My own voice shook. The whisper stopped. Silence. And then, behind me, a thud. I whipped around. Nothing but darkness. My flashlight flickered, and for a split second, I thought I saw movement. Something pale sliding back into the shadows. My chest tightened. My brain screamed, "Go upstairs now." I turned for the ladder. The trap door slammed shut. Total darkness fell around me. The faint beam from my flashlight sputtered and died. The silence was thicker now, pressing against my ears like heavy water. And then I heard it. A slow, dragging step. Something was moving toward me. I backed up fast until my shoulders hit the cold stone wall. My hands brushed the deep grooves of the claw marks, cold, wet, and slick. The steps were uneven, as if whatever it was had too many legs, or not enough. Each one crunched on the damp floor, slowly, deliberately. The whisper returned, but not faint anymore. Louder, right beside my ear. A jumble of sounds I couldn't understand, like someone trying to talk through a mouth full of water. The breath was cold enough to make my skin ache. I raised my hands in the dark, my voice trembling. Liam? Sarah? Matt? This isn't funny. No answer. Something brushed my arm. Not a grab, more like a curious touch, testing my skin. The fingers, if they were fingers, were ice cold. I shoved away and stumbled forward blindly, my shoulder hitting a shelf. Something fell to the floor with a metallic clang and rolled away. That's when it whispered my name. Perfectly. Slow, drawn out, like it was tasting it. I lost it. I ran in the direction I thought the ladder was, smacking into walls, scraping my hands raw. My shoulder cracked against something wooden. My fingers found the rungs. Thank God. I climbed fast. Above me, the trapdoor stayed stubbornly shut when I shoved. I pushed harder, my breaths ragged. The wood wouldn't budge. Below, the dragging steps sped up. The voice turned into several voices now, overlapping, all whispering at once, all wrong, some high-pitched, some deep and rattling, none of them human. The air grew colder. My teeth chattered so hard I nearly bit my tongue. One of the voices was right beneath me now. I could hear the wet sound of its breathing. Then, something pulled at my foot. Hard. I screamed and kicked until my heel connected with something solid. The grip loosened for half a second, just enough for me to slam my shoulder into the trapdoor with every bit of strength I had left. It burst open. Light, blessed, warm, late afternoon light, hit my face. I scrambled up, slamming the door shut and yanking the rug back over it. The others burst into the room a second later. Sarah grabbed me. "Where have you been? We've been calling you for an hour." I couldn't speak. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. When I finally looked back toward the trap door, I realized something that froze me even more than the basement had. The brass handle was gone. Just smooth wood where it had been. That night, none of us slept. And now, even after leaving, I hear it sometimes. That whisper, not faint anymore, right beside my ear, and it still knows my name. Story 3. You ever look into a mirror and feel it's looking back? Not just at your face, right through you, like it knows things you shouldn't. I didn't believe in that feeling. Not until the weekend at Liam's uncle's Lakehouse. The four of us, me, Liam, Sarah, and Nina, had planned for quiet days and late-night drinks. The attic wasn't on our to-do list, but rain kept us indoors on the second day, and boredom is a dangerous thing. The attic door was a warped wooden hatch in the ceiling above the hallway. When Liam tugged the cord, it came down with a groan, showering us with dust. The smell hit me first. Old wood, wet fabric, and something sour underneath. We climbed the narrow steps into the gloom. The place was crammed with boxes and covered furniture. My flashlight beam swept over cracked porcelain dolls, broken picture frames, and stacks of yellowed newspapers. That's when I saw it. At the far end of the attic stood an old, ornate mirror taller than me, with a frame of blackened silver carved into twisting vines. Despite the dust on everything else, the glass was spotless. Something about it made my skin crawl. Sarah joined me. "Creepy, but kind of pretty," she said, stepping closer. We both looked into it. At first, it showed exactly what you'd expect. Us standing shoulder to shoulder, dusty beams behind us. Then Sarah frowned. "Who's that?" I followed her gaze. In the mirror behind us stood a man, a tall figure, skin pale and bloated, clothes hanging in tatters. His hair was slick against his face, dripping as though he'd just stepped from a river. I spun around. Nothing. When I looked back at the glass, he was still there. I laughed nervously, telling myself it was some trick of the light. But then his head tilted slightly, and I realized he was looking at me. My chest went cold. "We should cover it," I muttered. "Or just leave." But Liam had wandered over now, smirking. "It's just your imagination," he said, and stared into the mirror for a long moment. Too long. When he stepped back, something in his face seemed wrong. His smile was stiff, eyes too wide. He didn't speak, just kept watching the mirror like it was holding his attention hostage. That night during dinner, he barely ate, just smiled that same too big smile and followed our movements with his eyes. I brushed it off until I went to the bathroom later and caught sight of my reflection in the small upstairs mirror. At least, I thought it was mine. The face looking back was me, but the eyes had water dripping from them. Dark water that pooled along the sink's edge. I stumbled back, my heart racing, only to blink and see my normal face again. I didn't sleep that night. Sometime after midnight, I heard faint tapping overhead. The attic. The next morning, I told Sarah what happened. She paled, saying she'd woken in the night to find Liam standing at the edge of her bed, smiling, without saying a word. When we went to find him, he wasn't in his room. We heard creaks above us. The attic. We climbed up and found him standing in front of the mirror. But this time, there were 3 figures in the glass. Him and 2 pale, soaked apparitions behind him. They were smiling too. When Liam turned to us, that smile didn't leave his face. "You should look longer," he whispered. "They want to meet you." Against every instinct, my eyes flicked to the mirror again. One of the figures in the reflection stepped forward. The glass rippled like water. Its hand emerged, dripping cold drops onto the attic floor. I grabbed Sarah's arm. "We're leaving, now!" But Nina had already frozen in place, her gaze locked on the mirror. Her reflection didn't move when she did. It just stood there, grinning, head tilting like a curious animal. Then, slowly, her reflection stepped out. We screamed. The thing, identical to Nina but with pale, drowning eyes, smiled and took a shuddering step toward her. I grabbed Nina and yanked her backward. The fake Nina tilted its head at me, and its smile dropped into something hateful. The attic light flickered. The mirror's surface rippled again, more figures pressing against it. Dozens of them now, their hands smearing water against the unseen barrier. We ran. I didn't look back until we were in the car, throwing bags into the trunk. Liam stayed behind in the attic, or I thought he did. When I slammed my car door shut, I froze. Sitting in the passenger seat was Liam, smiling, completely dry. But when he turned to look at me, his eyes dripped black water onto his shirt. I didn't wait. I bailed out of the car, screaming for Sarah and Nina to run. By the time the 3 of us reached the road, we were soaked, though it hadn't rained, not a drop from the sky. It's been 3 nights since. Sarah hasn't spoken once. Nina keeps staring at blank walls like she's waiting for someone inside them. And me? In every shiny surface, windows, spoons, my phone screen, I see them now. Those wet faces grinning behind me. I don't look for too long. I'm afraid of what will happen when they finally step all the way through. Story 4. You ever watch fog move like it's alive? Not drifting lazily like in movies, but curling fast, swallowing everything in sight, leaving you blind in your own backyard. That's what happened the last night at the Lakehouse, the night we stopped pretending we were alone out there. It was supposed to be a relaxing weekend. Just me, my brother Adam, his girlfriend Mia, our friend Logan, and 2 more, Claire and Josh. 6 of us total. The Lakehouse was old but beautiful, sitting right at the water's edge. The weather had been fine all day. Clear skies, still water. We'd even been planning a midnight swim. But just after sunset, the mist rolled in. Not normal mist. It came from the lake, fast and thick, in curling ropes of white that slithered over the dock, climbed the hill, and swallowed the yard. Within minutes, we couldn't see more than a couple of feet ahead. "Guess the swim's off," Logan joked, but his voice sounded smaller than usual. Then the water began to churn. No wind, no rain, just violent swirling waves smashing against the dock, spraying cold droplets into the fog. I felt the rumble of it through the boards, like something massive was moving just beneath the surface. That's when I saw the first shape. Through the mist, right below the waterline, something pale was floating just under the surface. At first, I thought it was a log. Then it moved. Slowly. Too slowly to be natural. A face. White, expressionless, eyes shut, and beside it, another. Back inside, I said, already stepping away from the dock. But Adam was still staring, leaning dangerously forward. "Do you see that light?" he whispered. I followed his gaze. Out in the fog, a faint glow pulsed. It looked wrong. Not fire, not a flashlight. Too smooth, too cold. Before we could stop him, Adam stepped off the dock into the mist, calling out. His footsteps faded almost instantly, eaten by the white void. We shouted his name until our throats cracked. No reply. The first hour had passed, and Adam was gone. Panic rose quick after that. We locked the door, pulled the curtains shut, and huddled in the living room. Time dragged. The fog pressed against the windows like something trying to see in. At exactly an hour after Adam vanished, Mia went still. Her head tilted like she was listening to something far away. "There," she whispered. "Do you hear it? Adam's calling me." Before we could react, she bolted to the door, threw it open, and ran into the mist. We chased her onto the porch, but she was already gone. The glow was back in the distance, pulsing, faint. This time, we didn't follow. Another hour, 3 left. Claire wouldn't stop pacing, muttering that it was some kind of gas, that we were hallucinating. Josh sat with his back against the door, holding a fire poker. Logan stared out through a crack in the curtain like he couldn't help himself. That's when the banging started. It came from the dock. Slow, heavy thumps like something wet and heavy was climbing onto it. But the fog was too thick to see. The thumps crept closer, onto the grass, onto the porch steps. I swear I saw a shadow shift in the door's glass pane, taller than a person. Then Logan whispered, "I see Adam." And before we could stop him, he was gone too. Each hour, exactly one of us was taken. As if the fog was on a schedule. Next was Josh, then Claire. I never even saw their faces before they vanished. They just slipped away, drawn to that cursed glow or to the whisper of someone they loved, until it was just me. The house felt too quiet without them. The kind of silence where you can hear your own heart drum in your ears. I sat in the middle of the living room floor, clutching the fire poker like it could help me. Somewhere outside, the glow flickered again. This time, it was closer. Then I heard it, Adam's voice, soft, gentle, calling my name from the fog just beyond the porch. Part of me knew it wasn't him. The other part, deep down, wanted it to be. The door handle turned. I backed away, breath shallow, but the door didn't open. Instead, a pale hand began to press against the glass pane, not banging, just resting there, leaving wet trails as the fingers slid slowly down. And then, beyond that hand, I saw the faces. Dozens of them. Pale, half submerged, hair floating as if they were underwater even though they stood on the porch. Their eyes were closed, their skin slick and rubbery. Each mouth moved, whispering my name. The glow flared bright, so bright the fog lit like daylight. The door creaked open on its own. My grip on the poker loosened. My feet moved forward without me meaning to step. The mist was so cold, it felt alive against my skin. The lake churned harder, splashing unseen shapes just beneath the surface. When I reached the dock, they were there. Adam, Mia, Logan, all of them, standing knee-deep in the water, smiling. Behind them, countless pale figures floated in the depths. The glow pulsed from somewhere far below, calling to me. I should have turned back. I didn't, because now I understand. It takes one every hour, and I was the last one left. Story 5. You know that uneasy feeling when you realize time isn't moving quite right? It's not about your watch being wrong. It's about knowing, deep inside, that something is tampering with the seconds you live in. That night at the Lakehouse, I felt it. And once you feel it, you never forget it. We were 5, me, Ben, Leah, Marcus, and Chloe, spending the weekend at Marcus's inherited old property. It was the kind of house where every floorboard had a memory, and every draft felt like fingers brushing against your neck. It was late, close to 1 in the morning, when I first heard the ticking. At first, I thought it was just a single clock somewhere, steady, hollow ticks echoing faintly down the hallway. But then I realized it wasn't one tick. It was dozens, maybe more, each slightly different, layered over one another like 100 restless heartbeats. Nobody else seemed to hear it. The sound pulled me toward the far end of the upstairs hall, where sunlight hadn't touched in years. The wallpaper there curled at the edges, and the smell of dust made my throat itch. Half hidden behind an old bookshelf was a narrow, splintered door I'd never noticed before. I pushed the shelf aside with a screech of wood on wood, my pulse matching the ticking. The door creaked open to reveal a room I doubt anyone else in the house knew existed. Clocks, every kind you can imagine. Grandfather clocks, pocket watches, faded children's alarm clocks, all crammed into a square, windowless space, and all of them were frozen. I stepped inside, feeling like I had crossed some invisible barrier. My breath hung in the air, too slow to fade. The hands on every clock were paused at 2:17. I should have left. I knew it even then. But I stayed. The moment I stepped past the threshold, the air changed. Heavy, too still. My ears rang faintly, though the ticking was gone now. That's when I heard something else. Whispers, soft, broken words that seemed to come from inside the clocks themselves. I leaned in to listen, and the room tipped around me like a boat at sea. The floor didn't move, but my sense of time did. It stretched. I blinked, and suddenly I wasn't in the room anymore. I was standing in the house, but not the way it was now. The wallpaper was brighter, the air warmer, and then I heard screaming. Down in the living room, I saw strangers, people I'd never met, huddled together as shadows, tall and thin and wrong-shaped, slid along the walls toward them. The shadows moved without sound, but every time they touched a person, that person stopped moving entirely, frozen mid-scream. I tried to run to them, but my legs wouldn't work. I felt glued in place. The next blink, everything changed again. Now, I was outside. Snow whirled through the air, but I wasn't cold. I saw Leah and Ben running across the frozen lake, looking over their shoulders in terror, but I couldn't see what was chasing them. It was as if the air behind them was bending, warping. I called their names. They didn't hear me. A shadow darted past me, tall, faceless, and suddenly they were gone. Just gone. I snapped back to the clock room with a gasp, my body trembling. My mouth was dry like I hadn't spoken in hours. There in the corner, I thought I saw movement. One of the grandfather clocks was humming softly. I stepped closer. In the reflection of its glass door, I saw Chloe, not here, not now, but waking in her bedroom downstairs. Something stood over her bed. A shadow with arms too long, its fingers almost brushing her face. I slammed my eyes shut. When I opened them, Chloe's reflection was gone. But the clock hands, they had moved. 17 had become 2:16. Time wasn't moving forward. It was going backward. I stumbled for the doorway, but the room seemed bigger now, stretching away from me like a hallway in a nightmare. Every step forward felt slower, like running underwater. Then, clear as day, I heard Marcus's voice outside the room. "Come on, we have to go." I lunged for the door. In the same instant, every clock in the room began to tick again. Not in unison, out of sync, chaotic, like they were mocking the very idea of time-keeping order. Shadows began to stretch into the room from under the doorway, sliding toward me. They didn't move like living things. They twitched in jerks, like broken film reels. I burst out into the hallway, slammed the hidden door shut, and shoved the bookshelf back in place. I thought I'd escaped until I saw the hallway. It wasn't right. The carpet was moldering. The wallpaper had peeled entirely, and at the far end lay Ben on the floor, eyes wide, unmoving. I shook him. His skin was cold. Footsteps echoed behind me. Slow, deliberate. When I turned, Marcus, Leah, Chloe, they were all standing there, but something was off. Their faces were blank. Their shadows stretched impossibly up the walls, and when Leah spoke, it was with the same whisper I'd heard inside the clocks. "You stayed too long." I blinked, and I was back in the clock room again. Only this time, I wasn't moving. My hands were frozen an inch from my face. Across from me, reflected in the curve of a brass clock, was my own still body. Somewhere beyond the glass, I could hear Marcus screaming in the real world, probably finding me stiff and cold. The clocks all struck 2:17 at once, and now I'm waiting, watching, for the next curious soul who hears the ticking. For more stories like this, share and subscribe, Goofy Horror.